So just a couple logistic things. I'm Jonathan Dinger, pastor at Grace Lutheran Church in Pocatello, Idaho. And if you're in this one, it's talking about a network of church and school partnerships. And so I'm grateful for you coming. I'm still old school enough. To be honest, there were only 3 people signed up for this before we started. And it was at 10:30, and our flight's at 1:50. So I may go quickly. And I'm going to ask your forgiveness. There's contact info. I'm always happy to field comments, questions. If you want more information, I'll give you some background on this, and we'll let you know what's going on. But we're in room 33 at 10:30 on Saturday morning. Let's have a prayer. Let's begin with a prayer. Gracious Lord God, how privileged and honored we are that you've called us into ministry. That by your call, you invite us to follow where you lead. Lord, our faith sometimes it falters, it's challenging. Those things that you've given us to do are not always easy or evident, but we long to fix our eyes on you as you lead us. Lord, I thank you for the ministry of churches and schools, especially those who work together. When churches see the vision of being able to build bridges into their community, to raise up those children that they baptize, to reach the community who doesn't know you at all, and to strengthen those families, we are just so privileged that families entrust their kids to us. And so, Lord, help us to do it in a way that honors you, that draws people to you, because we know that's your heart and passion. You want heaven to be full. And so help strengthen our ability to do those things you called us to do in the communities we serve. All right, so I have some paper here. So I do chuckle because I don't have QR codes and things for you to scan. So... And Singer, you can look at it too. PCE is here. Anyone else need a piece? I always like getting it, so I have something to jot it. Anyway, so 2 years ago, we were. I presented this actually on the day before the conference. I had reached out to a number of schools. Here's the context. I'm the pastor at Grace Lutheran Church in Pocatello, Idaho. Some of you probably have no idea where that is. It's in the corner of southeast Idaho. We're in Mormon country. 60 to 65% of our population is Mormon. And the total population draw that we have is about 90,000 people total. And yet we have a church that worships about, pre-COVID, 450. Now it's 300. It's about 300 online. And then a school of 540 kids. It shouldn't exist. It just shouldn't exist, and no credit to us. I inherited it. I'm standing on the shoulders of others that went before me, and I'm grateful. I'm just trying not to screw it up, ride the wave and really keep reaching families. I mean, just in the last cycle, we really received new members twice a year. We had 16 baptisms, and 12 of those were adults and 4 kids, and 6 of them were former Mormons. So it's that happens about twice a year for us. So it's not a flood, but it's a regular kind of stream that happens. But here's the dilemma. So in our setting, we have this school of over 500 kids, and it's church. It's a complex, dynamic place, 104 employees. We have to travel to Las Vegas or Denver to find a similar ministry. And so when we go to conference, it's really hard. I mean, we love it because we have the chance. Like if you look at Luke 12:48, this drives us heavily. And I think I want it to drive this conversation as well. When we look at what God has given us to do, I believe there's a sense of urgency and there's some opportunity. I'm a huge advocate for Lutheran schools. I was a teacher before I went back to seminary. It's the second career for me. So I taught in Japan and in Seattle. And so this was a vocational dream for me. I came to Pocatello, and with the congregation had a 40-year history of wanting to have a Lutheran high school. So they had done early childhood up through grade 8, and we had the privilege and joy of seeing that launch in 2016. So it was cool. We have 70 students in our high school, and as I said, about 540 altogether from age 2 to grade 12. We call it from diapers to diplomas, is what we call it now. So, and it really is a very amazing, dynamic place. But we do take seriously that passage, to whom much has been given, much is required. And so we love to serve others and to help consult with other schools. We go to Idaho Falls, Twin Falls, going down to Salt Lake City, and help others but there are times when we really need somebody to talk to and to collaborate with. So the vision behind this is especially, and so this is what you have in your hands, this particular piece. This was a piece that I sent out before the last best practices to a group of churches that kind of fit a certain profile. And so I don't want you to shut down because you may not fit this profile. Let me get to it here a minute. But the first wave was kind of churches that worshiped a fairly significant group of people, say 200. It's kind of complex and you have multiple staff. And then had a school that was about 200. And so it's multiple grades and had some multiple staff. And so the complexity of that is just different than if it's you and your DCE and a preschool director and 2 preschool teachers. That's a different kind of complexity. Now, having said that, praise God if you have that. If you have that thing that I just described, it's awesome. If I had one thing I would do is I would tell every Lutheran church that because we all have facilities, is please start a child care program and provide before and after school care and meet a need in your community so you can build a bridge to that. Because every church I go and consult with, because I consult with Natural Church Development too, they all say this. You know what they say? Our church is so old. And I will say to them, without knowing anything, when did you close your preschool? Because they almost all close their preschool because it messes up the carpet. Or we couldn't meet for quilting at 10 a.m. in that space. Or whatever. And I don't mean to be nasty or mean-spirited that way. But it's prioritization. And so this is, when I presented this, we had about 62 people. We met up here the day before best practices, and then 3 weeks later, everything shut down, right? With this COVID. But we had some strong energy built among a number of schools like that, and our plan was to meet at least annually, if not twice a year, in Las Vegas to discuss issues that are pertinent to our schools. And again, hang in here with me because I got a couple of building block pieces that I think are critical in this as well. Because those conversations are just different. And I so wish we tried. We made an effort to meet in January in Las Vegas. Pastor Michelson at Faith Lutheran and Steve Booth, they've been real champions. And we sent the word out and nobody was interested. I think everyone, to be honest, is exhausted. I just think people are exhausted. And to say I got to add another thing into the plate is a really, really hard sell. It's a heavy lift right now. But I'm unwilling to give up this idea. So that's why I wanted to offer here to cast this vision and create some connecting points, because I'm now at a point, I don't care what size school you are. There's only one thing I care about, and even that, I will tell you, I would love to work on helping get there. So I'll get to that. But does that vision make sense to you? What we're trying to do is how do you get those churches, those schools, especially single churches that are sponsoring. I've been part of associations, and they are a whole other cat, right? That's a whole other animal. Nobody owns a school, really, unless it's on their campus. And so they're hard. Associations are challenging. But this is single church. Because it's hard to kind of kill a school that's in a single church. Because it's their school, and they love it, usually. And if they don't, that's a topic we've got to talk about. So that's the idea as to who much has been given, what much is required. And so the idea is so many of us silo, and we kind of go our own way and just kind of do our own thing. We're busy, and we've worked through it, and we kind of have solutions that are pertinent to our setting or the dynamics of our faculty. And so this value of mine, and I've been a pastor now 26 years, and my style is collaborative. I love to check egos at the door when that's possible, gather smart people, passionate, committed people around a table, and then talk ministry. How do we get there? How do we get to that spot? And collaboration is hard, because so many of our folks that are you all, or that have been called, are competent, they're skilled, and they're skilled in their areas. It's kind of like, leave me alone, let me do my thing. It is more work to work collaboratively and to do it effectively than not. But that's another driving force of this idea, is that together we can collaborate without ego, without coming in and saying, my school does it better than yours. That's why I love this conference. I've been here 9 of the 10 years. And so I just love it because it was such a revelation to me the first time I came. Because I actually teased Jeff because I go, Jeff, I don't find that Lutherans here lie very much. I actually find us being fairly transparent. in which some things aren't working so great, but some things are, and that's why it's best practices. We come and we say, this thing is pretty cool for us, and we'd like to share it with you. We're not pretending that it's all perfect, but this thing's pretty cool, and we'd love to get your input on it. So a collaborative idea is what's behind this as well. And so here's and I'm sorry this is so dim, the need for trust among leaders. We struggle with that, sometimes denominationally. We do want pats on the back. We want to feel as if we're succeeding. The pastors in the room, that's always it's a great, great blessing when you can go to a circuit or a Winkle meeting and guys are actually honest and you can really care for one another and you're not pretending that everything is perfect and life is great. And so the desire of this effort is to create that kind of consortium of trust where people can do that, building bridges, not imposing obstacles, sharing resources, not reinventing the wheel again and again and again and again. I would desperately love someone to teach our folks how to use Planning Center and use it well, or really how to make RenWeb really sing, and because we're guessing. And we're doing it all on our own, and so with YouTube videos, that kind of thing. To inspire and to encourage one another, to not imagine that we have all the answers and see our schools as the greatest asset that our congregations have to reach our communities today. And so that is a fundamental core value of our congregation in Pocatello. Our school is our primary and most fundamental way of making ourselves relevant in our community and building a bridge to those families. It is just how it is, and we're unapologetic, and yet it doesn't mean our church is sitting around on its hands. We're partnering in that way to try to move forward. So I'm just kind of curious. Can you give me an idea what you're involved in, with the kind of ministry that you're at? Church, school, single church, association? Do you mind just kind of sharing? Go ahead.
Sure, I'm at St. Peter Ellington High. Our school's about 550. Church worship's about 500-600 a week.
Okay, right on.
Single
Single congregation.
White suburban, wealthy
Preschool
areas.
through 8.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. What other schools? Yeah.
Nathan Stevens, I'm with Paris Greenfield out in Gilbert.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, I'm an elementary school teacher. So with that, we are kind of also in Mormon territory out in Gilbert. We worship between the two campuses and an online presence of just over 1,000. Might be wrong. School of about 400 preschool through 8th grade, looking at a high school model.
Oh, right on. Is it Tim there? Is it
Yeah.
Tim? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Other examples? Yeah. What do you got in Merrill?
Worship about 500, and have a school of about 200.
Okay, right on. Through grade 8. It's like a preschool through 8.
Preschool grade, yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I'm out in Davenport, Trinity Davenport. We have a school about 350 to 400. Numbers are kind of gone up and down over the years. And we only worship about 200.
Okay, that's great. Awesome. Yeah.
Emmanuel Lutheran, Memphis, Tennessee. We're kind of on a downswing right now, although building back up. Our school's at about 125 preschool through 8th grade, and our church, we worship for just under 200.
Okay, right on. Cool. I just love to hear where you're from, too. So, other schools? Okay, right on. There's a school, and is it you guys? Or in school, not you guys, but I guess in Oklahoma, it's a K through 12.
Yes.
And it's a single congregation.
Is it China?
I can't remember. But there's only about 6 of us in the synod that are pre-K through 12. That's a thing. And the complexity level is so interesting, and your questions are different. I mean, when you go through multiple grades. So please don't hear me disparaging. If all you have is a preschool and a church, awesome. Praise God. But the questions are just different. And how you collaborate. Like I think about fundraising. I think about building. Like, for example, when I talk to people about building, our church has become just an expert on how to build buildings for $110 a square foot. And so we can tell you how to do that. We can help guide you through it. But we would love some advice on technology and on connecting to families and, things like that. Or if you have we're dying for a great conversation about middle school Christian studies curriculum. We would love to identify something just fantastic, but we don't have it. So there's some things that we can offer and others. You get the idea of what this is about. where you gather those like-minded, similar groups, and then we sit around a table twice a year. And for me, I'm uninterested in just having a conversation. It's nice to encourage one another and cheer, but if I don't have takeaways, it's why I keep coming to this. I counted last night. I have 13 takeaways so far. Takeaways that I will come and talk with my team and say, should we implement this thing? This is a thing. And it could be, one takeaway is as simple as, here's a book I think we should read. To, here's a way we should alter how we live stream, or how we connect with visitors, all of those things. So that's the idea behind this, and I'm sorry if I didn't get to all of you, and I'm apologizing in advance, because about 11:25, that guy and I are going to run to our car so we can get to the airport. So please forgive me. And that's my info up there if you want to email me or get any other information on this idea. Now, this is the piece where I'm going to slow down and stop for a second, because as we develop, this is a non-negotiable for this group. And so when I say non-negotiable, it doesn't mean it can't happen, but it has to be in place for this to function. So this is have full buy-in from pastor and church leadership, as well as principal and school leadership and faculty. You have to be all in on each other. It can't be, well, that's the school thing, and that's the church, and you kind of talk about, the school's a pain in the rear, or the school's going, the church just doesn't get us. And the pastor is not supportive. This is an all-in, I love my school, and I love my church, and we are full partners on it. Now, who's perfect at that? I don't know anyone perfect at that, but I will say this: when we had our accreditation, that was a what do they call it? What do they call it? NLSA, a commendable thing, or I forget. They highlighted it's a best practice or it's something like that. And that was the top of our list, was that our church and our school have that kind of relationship, full on, fully supportive. Now, again, it's not perfect, but that's the idea. Because if you don't have this, it won't work. It just can't work. So at these gatherings that we plan to have, it's pastor and principal. It's those, they have to be there. You can't send one and the other one says, no, I don't have time for that. They have to both be in so that the implementables and the takeaways come together. Now, I'm going to stop here because I'm not asking for a show of hands, but I don't know, maybe all of you have that wonderful relationship cooking in your settings. Maybe you do. If you do, we don't have to have this part of the conversation. But if we don't, anybody who doesn't, it's a challenge, right? So how do we get there, right? How do we get there? So forgive me, I'm going to ask you to look at something here. Do you mind helping me look? Forgive me, more paper. Look at this. I'm like from 1985. But this, and so I'll just give you a little background while he's giving this to you. In my premarital counseling, I don't do like 12 sessions. I do like 4. And so I do an introductory, and I kind of talk over what I'm going to do with folks, with the couple, and just to see if they're still willing to work with me. Because if they don't, they'll get somebody from online, or their cousin, or their neighbor, And so I describe what I'm doing, and then for 3 sessions, my hobby horse with them, because I always tell them, look, I'm the pastor. I want you in church. I want your relationship in Christ to grow. I want you to commit to that. I want Christ to be the third chord in your strand. I want that to happen. So you know that about me, and we do spend 1 week all in the Bible. But my big hobby horse with them is I say to them, go to your friends who are married and ask them what the plan is for their marriage. And they will look at you like you have 9 heads. Because they don't have one. They're not intentional. And so my whole goal with couples is to tell them, is to just be very forceful. You have to have a plan. What is that plan going to look like? And the reason I share this with you is we've taken this and use it in our school because we really do describe it periodically as a marriage of church and school ministry. That it has that level of commitment and really trust and support for one another. So when I give them a model like this, so I love to ask couples, I say, tell me why you love your spouse. And it's just kind of a little bit trite. But I tell them, do that and look at each other and tell them why you love them. Because I tell them, you often do a really good job of saying that you love each other. But you don't tell each other why. And you need to tell each other why. So churches and schools do that. Oh, you love the school. Say why. Because we had eighth graders go over and help Sherry clean out her gutters and put up a handrail for her steps. Our eighth graders are awesome, and the church is saying that. Or the school says, oh man, we had the ladies from the LWML, they came and they brought us a pizza party because they found out, students of the month, they did that. We love our ladies from the church. And so telling them why is just a critical thing. So one of the key ways to start this, if you don't have this, even if you do this, this is worth doing. To stop with your school leadership and church leadership and say, here's why we love our school. We love it for this reason. You might have to do some data mining. You might need to find out how many people. Fully half of our new members come through our early childhood center. Half. We bring about 60 adults a year. Half of them come through our early childhood center. That's just a fact. And I love to tell the congregation that. Our school is such a blessing because there's a family, there's a family, there's a family, there's a family, and they all came to the school. And so, and the church and the school in the same way, we love our church because they are so flexible, and when we need something to happen, they don't complain, and they give us the space, and they cheer for us, and they show up to our dramas and come and cheer at our games. It's wonderful. We just love it. So one of the things is say why. Then, if you look at this, this why you love each other is just one of the things, and this is the things that we talked about at Grace with my principal and with me. And then I talk about 3 different things. And so one is, I tell couples, you need to do a weekly thing, you need to do a monthly thing, and you need to do an annual thing. Now I tell them, this is not dogma. Do what you want. You should come up with your own plan. But I said, here's a good thing. The single most important thing in any relationship, communication, right? So I say weekly, if you're not meeting weekly as a church and a school team in detail, not for 5 minutes, not a stand-up 5-minute meeting, 10-minute meeting, just to make sure that you're not both trying to use the gym at the same time. You need to have real meeting. We meet for an hour and a half. We do Bible study. We have prayers. We keep prayer. We pray for one another. We talk about scheduling a calendar. We talk about major ministry initiatives that are happening. We discuss how and why it should happen. Everything from how do we do chapel better, how do we change what we're teaching in Christian studies, how do we support, the next field trip that's going on, or whatever it is. So we are always on the same page. Now our church team meets an additional time, and that's a blessing for us too, just for our church to be able to focus in on certain things there. But that weekly communication, constantly communicating, is just a fundamental key. Then monthly, I tell couples, you got to date each other. You got to at least set up at least once a month. And if you do it, I hope you do it more than that. But at the very least, set up a date night once a month. So that, and I tell this to the guys especially, the guys, you need to keep telling your wife that she is the most precious thing God has put in your life. And you keep pursuing her and keep telling her that. I just think it's a great gift that you give. And I think that's true in this relationship. You want to romance each other. You want to love each other. You want to express that. We just love that you do this. Any chance you can have to cheer, you take the opportunity. It can never be fake. Okay? You can never lie. It can't be fake because everyone knows you are. And so, but you do everything you can to cheer for it. And that's just, I call it romance. And you do that every month. So right now, we just made a shift where we're hoping once a month, or it might end up being twice a month, but kind of on a monthly basis, our school is coming into the church and just saying, hey, we did this. We're grateful for what you did to support us. Just doing that. And we haven't done that for a long, long time. Newsletters and emails, but how many people do it and so forth. And then the last thing is an annual thing. We do an annual retreat, school and church together. We spend 2 days, 2 full days, planning, theming, planning out the whole year, and doing it with school executive staff, not all faculty, but school executive staff and our church program staff. And so it's about 10 or 12 of us that get together, and we spend that time, usually right after the school year is out, and then we're planning the whole next year out. So all those things are a level of intentionality that build that key value. Because that key value, this network that I'm talking about hoping to have, it just can't happen unless church and school are all in together. If they're all in together, pastor has to really be cheering, principal has to really be cheering for the church, pastor for the school. Questions at this point? Comments you want to make, please?
Yeah, you guys talk about the
at 9 Center.
You get all of your teacher and,
No, not, this is executive.
okay.
Now, we regularly are involved in teacher meetings, right? So beginning of the year meetings, where our church staff is regularly involved there. And our church staff, so I have 3 DCEs, and they're all involved in teaching and associate pastor. So they are all involved, Brian's one of them, teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade Christian studies. And we're deeply involved in chapel planning. We collaborate on that. So no, we don't meet as a whole, but we meet, so here's another thing. We meet every morning for devotions. And it's church and school staff mix. And our school staff has done a nice job of it not being me, but of them saying, this is a value, you need to be here.
Yeah.
Don't be blowing in 5 minutes
And
late.
we meet in morning, but we have a lot of the church, this is the church, this is the
Yeah.
church. And like our pastor comes in for one devotion on Tuesday, but then it's more of like a mini sermon that he's given, and then we go on. So,
Right. Everyone takes a deep breath, puts up
and
with
then,
it.
sorry, I have one more question, not to.
No, it's all good.
But annually, so we do a retreat too,
Mhm.
but I get, because I get both sides. So I do like family ministry, but then I'm also a teacher. So I get both sides of like, I get a lot of groaning from the teachers, like, oh, it's our annual retreat. Like, do you do like a day thing, or do you do like?
Now with the annual retreat, it's, so I have high school principal, elementary principal, and executive director. That's the school representation, not faculty.
Okay.
Not everybody. And then I have 3 DCEs, 2 pastors. I think that's
Yeah.
maybe a worship person too is in on that. So it's different. And they have now, but beginning of the year meetings, there's 2 to 3
Yeah.
days of that. And that's where there is some groaning. And so
Yeah, there's
always groaning.
It's teaching.
Right. It's teacher meetings. But we're constantly trying our very, very best to cheer for our teachers in every way we can. Now, it's not perfect. I wish I had all our teachers in church regularly. I don't. That's a really toughie. I mean, do I keep attendance? Do I tell you you're fired if you don't? I mean, what do I do? I mean, it's a trick. And I'm not a guy that does a good job of drawing lines in the sand. I'm not good at that. It's a weakness of my leadership style. So anyway, that's a challenge. But yes, I don't know if that answers your question. So daily, we're with the staff. We're with them daily, devotions. And that is a tone setter that's just awesome. And I'm there. I'm there at least 3 days a week. And so I just make an effort to be there every time I can possibly be there. So our church team. So weekly thing, daily things, weekly things, monthly things. Any other questions at this point? So, how am I doing? So this is the idea, and so what I want to do is give a chance. So this was the idea that I just shared with you, growing deeply in trust and affection. So my question is, that I presented 2 years ago, was this something worth pursuing? And what was really fascinating was then we brainstormed. So I had groups of 62 people at different tables. So we had about 8 or 10 different tables. And they brainstormed the key elements, the key things that they thought were primary things that could come out of something like this. And they were things such as, it was just really exciting to see. And I wanted the group to drive it. I didn't want to come and say, hey, here's what I think you should do. So the group raised up about, it was about 20 things, and then we ranked them all. And you know what the number one thing was? Was how do we teach our kids to keep their faith once they graduate from this place? That was the number one thing. Another thing was, how do we help grow our faculty members' faith and their expression of that faith in the classroom? That was the second thing. And you know what I expected it to be? Like recruitment and development. And those were the 2 key things. And I said, praise God, how cool is that? That that's what they wanted to do. We want to make sure our kids are still deeply in love with Jesus, that they know their Savior once they've left this place. And that we want our teachers to be the best possible models of Christian faith and life that they can be in front of their students. Now, beyond that, we did go to things such as technology, recruitment and retention, branding. How do we do those things? And what was so neat was, at the end of that meeting, we had 3 different task forces that had been identified in key areas, ready to meet. And then those groups were going to meet as task forces. And then the next time we met, 6 months later, they then shared those tangible takeaways. Here's what we learned from the schools that participated. Here are some things you can actually consider and put into practice in your setting. So that's as far as we got. And so a large part of what I'm sharing with you is this something that you might think is worth pursuing? And if it is, I would love you to contact me so that I can put you on my contact list and help drive it forward. Because we're kind of in a pause pattern, and our plan is to meet actually in Las Vegas, which is like the easiest, cheapest place to get to. If you're west anyway, if you live kind of west of the Mississippi, it's just a super, super cheap and easy place to get to. And Faith Lutheran in Las Vegas is a tremendous model. They have facility, and they're willing to host us at no cost. It's a similar idea to this, is that you just get there, and we'll feed you, and we'll teach, and we'll meet, and we'll try to put this group together and let those ideas foster and come out. So that's kind of the idea behind this, and I wanted a chance to have a conversation, to have a discussion about this. But let me share with you, here's some of the ideas behind it. When you look on this first page that was a network of like-minded church-school partnerships, this was really kind of the idea. Is staffing an issue for any of you? It's a terrible challenge for us. And honestly, think about it. We'd like you to come to beautiful Pocatello, Idaho. What? You know, they just have no clue. And so they think you're going to some, I don't know where they think you're going. But how do you staff? How do you share resources? And what we so often do is we get staff and then we just covet them, right? And we do this. And so how are we raising up people? How are we working towards that? How do we mentor people amongst each one another as we find people with great expertise? Like, what if there's a great development person or a great recruitment and retention person? How do we get them in a cohort and allow them to mentor one another in that setting? Because I don't know about you, and maybe you're in a district where there are lots of schools like yours. We're not. I did this very selfishly in a lot of ways because we just don't have people to meet with. And so I'm hungry for those kind of relationships to me. Like, we would love to talk about, how do you do chapel? Do your middle school kids sing in chapel? You know, I mean, I don't know. Ours don't. How do you do it? How do you raise that up? I would love to hear those ideas. How about identifying donors and cultivating donors? That's my background. I'm a development guy. And so to help identify and nurture and care for donors, I love to help teach and mentor that and share that expertise. That kind of thing. Building curriculum. Do you have a united curriculum that really helps the faith development of kids? Do you have a school in which is theology actually a core curriculum subject in your school? I would say that's a weakness of ours. It needs to be, and I don't think it is. We kind of say it, but it's not. That kind of thing. So we don't know how to get the answers to those things. And I'm not good with a Zoom call. For me, you could disagree with this, but for me, the pandemic has proven to me we need to be tighter and smaller and more intimate. It needs to be that. It needs to be higher touch, not less touch. So, because for us, I've been on hundreds and hundreds of Zoom meetings, and they are exceedingly unsatisfying in terms of the collaborative effort that you want to do. You can check off some boxes on a Zoom meeting, but to do a collaborative effort is virtually impossible. So these are the kinds of things that we identified. How do you engage with your community? What bridges are you building in there to help draw them in? What are the percentages that you're dealing with? Like, only 15% of our kids are Lutheran. 12% of our kids are Mormon in our school. You know, and there's a bunch of unchurched and then other Christian kids. So how does that dynamic play into it as well? So this was not, you may not walk away with a takeaway here very much in terms of, here, I gave you some great tool. What I really am trying to pose is this an idea worth presenting? Because for many of us, and I'm not suggesting that you abandon your teachers' conferences, because if you are a vibrant school and you are healthy and you are working towards those things, you need to be in those places to whom much has been given. It's appropriate for you to help strengthen those that are around you who may need that help. But if we are struggling to find like-minded people to be able to share resources and move forward in that way. So that's about what I have for you today. And then this other one is just kind of a worksheet on that dovetails with if you are struggling with a church-school relationship, Or if you would like to try to strengthen it, this is a tool that you can actually work through that mirrors that other one to say, what are you doing intentionally, daily, weekly, monthly, that grows your relationship so that you can get to a spot where collaborative work really is effective and meaningful. So, any comments or questions on this? Because if you contact me, I put you in my list, and then as the word goes out, we're kind of running flags up the pole and seeing when people's energy and opportunity is ready to try to act again. So we're looking at this summer again, possibly doing it. It may not, maybe there won't be energy yet for it at that point. But even if we got about 6, Craig, Pastor Michelson and I said we think we would do it with even just a small handful. We had about 20 before the pandemic hit. And anyway, that's the idea. Good, look at that, you get out early. Teachers. Hey, would you say the blessing with me? Would you do that? The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up his countenance upon us and give us peace.